Vladimir Putin, like him or loathe him, he is a very experienced negotiator, and he is running rings around Donald Trump. And he basically keeps pushing for more and more.
And Volodymyr Zelensky has given his first reaction to the phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin, saying he supports the idea of a 30-day energy truce, but has called for more details. He was speaking during a press conference on his trip to Finland, saying we've always supported the idea of not attacking energy infrastructure with any weapons, but that Russia is not ready to end the war in full. Let's look at the detail now with Leigh Turner, former British ambassador to Ukraine. Leigh, good evening.
Hi, Kate.
You've seen both the US readout and the Russian readout, I know, and now we have the comments of Volodymyr Zelensky. What does Zelensky do with this now, Leigh?
I think Zelensky is going to be biting his tongue not to point out that Putin has basically given Donald Trump a brush off. We've seen the US really twist Ukrainian arms to agree to what they call an immediate, complete 30-day ceasefire. So the Ukrainians have agreed to that somewhat against their will, because the Ukrainians say, well, you just can't trust the Russians. There's no point in doing this. And then the Americans have gone to the Russians. We saw an American representative visit Moscow last week, and now Donald Trump apparently has had 90 minutes talking to Putin on the phone, and Putin has told him to, stick his head where the sun don't shine, really.
But Trump seems very happy with this.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I was just looking at the reports saying that Trump describes the call as very good and productive. In fact, this idea of having a brief 30-day pause on attacking energy and infrastructure is about the minimum that Putin could possibly have agreed to. And I must say, when Zelensky says this shows that Russia is not ready to end the war, we really have to agree with that. Russia seems to have no interest in making any concessions whatsoever. They continue to make these very maximalist demands, and yet Trump simply cannot say this call went badly and I'm irritated with Putin, which is what he should be saying.
Zelensky has also said on Putin's demand to see all foreign military aid and intelligence sharing halted. So in other words, all foreign support, military intelligence support into Ukraine to be halted for the duration of this, we'll call it limited ceasefire. He said that Ukraine's allies would never agree to such a move and that he hopes supplies would continue. So my question to you has been, what does Zelensky do now? And you have given me the answer that he should just hold his tongue and wait a little bit. But the question can be applied to Western nations. Our own Prime Minister Keir Starmer, for example, who is going to come out and out say that is unacceptable.
Yes, I absolutely agree. The big risk here, Kate, is that the Americans, who have been really stop-start on the provision of aid to Ukraine, intelligence sharing and military hardware, as you remember, they stopped it for a short period to encourage Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire. And then it seems to have started again. And Vladimir Putin, like him or loathe him, he is a very experienced negotiator, and he is running rings around Donald Trump, and he basically keeps pushing for more and more. And the idea that the West, that Europe and the US and others should stop providing intelligence and weapons to Ukraine while they talk about a possible future peace deal is absolutely outrageous. And I very much hope that the White House and the Washington establishment are not listening to this. And I very much hope that the Europeans, who have been doing a lot of good work, I include the UK with the Europeans, by the way, have been doing some very good work on putting together some alternative military and economic aid to Ukraine. I hope that they will step up and continue to provide the aid that Ukraine desperately needs to stop this invasion.
We have also, remember, had both Keir Starmer and other European leaders, Macron, talk about their own version of a peace deal. And I wonder whether it's time to see that. Look, there's plenty still up in the air. We await to hear from Donald Trump. We should get something from him this evening. He's in the White House signing executive orders at some point, so no doubt we'll be able to give our listeners a fresh update. Leigh, great to speak to you again. Leigh Turner, former British ambassador to Ukraine. Still plenty of gaps to be filled in here. We've heard from Zelensky, a pretty cautious, measured response. He's in fact sort of laid the demand by Russia to stop military and intelligence aid into Ukraine. He sort of laid that on the door of Western leaders instead of telling us what he thinks about it. He says, I'm sure Western leaders or our Western allies will not be happy with that. Quite a clever way to do it. He does agree with the principle of a ceasefire on energy infrastructure. Didn't comment on the fact that that meant that Putin could carry on with his land warfare, of course. Let's head straight to Kyiv and speak to Maria Metsentseva, who's a Ukrainian MP for Volodymyr Zelensky's Servant of the People Party. Good evening to you, Maria.
Very good evening. I am currently in hero city, Kharkiv, my home city.
In Kharkiv. Well, look, thank you for joining us. Look, I wonder what Ukraine makes of this ceasefire deal brokered by Vladimir Putin and the US president today. It looks and sounds a little different to that agreed to by Volodymyr Zelensky this time last week.
Well, absolutely. If we're going to be, all international lawyers, we may read this proposal in such manner. Russia will try to stop committing genocide by trying to not to attack energy, critical infrastructure and other facilities like schools, hospitals, etc., with an exchange of Ukraine being on pause or absolutely stopping receiving aid, military aid, which was recently resumed from US, for instance. Well, I don't think this is very fair request. We understand as Ukrainians, this is a very unrealistic request. I think there were a lot on the table to discuss among these unrealistic proposals. We are very much looking forward to President Zelensky and, for instance, MFA to react back. Surely it's not going to be yes or no situation because we're not trading with our security whatsoever. We are very happy that UK, France, Denmark, Germany, with their historical decision to speed up the funds for security with the relocate to Ukraine are rolling. So.
Yeah. Look, we don't have an awful lot of time, but I must ask you what you think Volodymyr Zelensky should do now. What is the next step?
I am not advising President Zelensky whatsoever. I'm sure he's wise to do so.
I'm going to reword that for you.
I will. I'm sure he will not trade anyhow the territory, sovereign territory of Ukraine in exchange of very vague and very lame proposals from the Russian side.
So would you, sorry to interrupt you, would you pass on this ceasefire agreement brokered by Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump? You'd already agreed to one this time last week, but on this particular ceasefire deal brokered today, this has to be a firm no from Ukraine.
Let's see for the reaction, of course. I think President Zelensky was very firm on stating the fact that we are not trading with territories, we are not trading with people's life. We can start from very small, very major things for us, very small things for Russians. We can bring back all our deported children, people in captivity and prisoners of war. Why can't Russia do that as a sign of willingness for peace? They just want to us feel the pain. That's why all day long today we've been hearing sirens, including in Kiev and Kharkiv, where I'm located right now. And this is not a willingness for peace during the conversations with President Trump. So I think President Trump should may refer back to some harsh sanctions and some push on Russia currently as it was planned before. I don't see any other way because Russia is dropping unrealistic requests.
Yeah, look, we may well be back to square one as a result, of course. We need to recognise that. Maria Metsentseva, Ukrainian MP for Volodymyr Zelensky's Servant of the People Party. Good to speak to you, Maria. Appreciate your time. Thank you.